So we are presenting this on behalf of Ethical Reading, and Ethical Reading is a community interest organisation seeking to make Reading a better place to live. There are various parts to that, one of which is the Trees for Reading campaign, which is obviously getting companies to sponsor the planting of trees and making Reading a greener place. And this particular project is about making your bike safe. So I'm just about to launch a poll which will ask you about your current cycling habits into the centre of Reading. There's a few questions there. There's no big rush to answer it, but if you could just take your time over the next few minutes whilst I continue with the presentation. What I would do. There you go. So, securing the future of cycling in Reading is the aim of this project. My Bike is Safe is the title of this seminar. What you're seeing there is an example of an idea we'll talk to you all about towards the end of the presentation, but I'll start with a bit of background. So Reading Council, like the government and many other councils, have quite a few plans in place to make it safer to cycle on the roads, which is obviously great news. What we found, though, is that people are concerned about where they leave their bike when they've got to the town centre or got to a meeting or whatever, but there's actually very little activity around securing the bicycle as opposed to making it safer for people to ride on the roads. So we thought we would put some effort into that aspect, since that was the area that seemed to be under-addressed so far. So in doing that, what we obviously identified was there's two kind of main types of user that need to be supported. There are commuters, and I guess we all know what commuters are. They travel regularly and typically are away for quite a few hours. So, you know, you might be, say, cycling to Reading Station, getting on the train to London, staying there for, you know, an 8-hour working day, coming home later. So that will cause storage because the bike is there for quite a long time. And then, of course, there's the more ad hoc user, and that may be because they're going to the shops, they're going to a sports club, or they just want to cycle in for a coffee, or indeed they may be popping in for a business meeting, and that we'll call parking. And that's just for a few hours, you know, a couple of hours if it's a business meeting, maybe 4 hours if it's shopping with the family, and so on. So the needs are quite different, and so we have to think about that as we move forward. Now, there are obviously a lot of concerns about theft of bikes, and here you can see British Transport Police warning people that it's fairly easy to steal a bike if you don't have the right kind of lock. Some locks are great, many locks aren't. So it certainly is a concern. There are a number of solutions. This is actually a picture of bicycle lockers which can be rented at Tilehurst Station. So that's obviously a relatively secure mechanism, although if there was no supervision, obviously in the middle of the night, someone could still potentially break into those. But nevertheless, that's a good sign of, in this case, GWR trying to look after people's bike security. And then, of course, there's the thing that probably most people have seen is the basic U-frames or racks that you find dotted all around the place in town centres, outside offices and so on, where you have to bring your own lock, your own chain, which obviously is a burden, and you lock it to one of those frames. So different types of user, different types of solution. So what the poll that hopefully you can see is asking, what is your current habits around cycling into the centre of Reading? So do you do this at all? How often do you do it? And what's the purpose typically? Is it for leisure, shopping, or maybe it's shopping and business meetings or regular work? So obviously we're interested to understand these things as the kind of background for the project. Where do you park your bike today? Perhaps your employer is providing something, or the building operator is, or maybe you're using those racks that we saw a picture of. But at the end, would you cycle more if you knew your bike was secure? And that's obviously the focus of this. Our belief is that the lack of bicycle security is holding people back, whether it's the family wanting to cycle in, or whether it's a shop worker, or indeed someone going for a business meeting. So we'd like to, hopefully if you can fill in that poll, that will help us with the background. So again, there are surprisingly quite a lot of solutions and lots of different suppliers of products. So solutions aren't exactly the issue. The main problem is where those solutions are deployed, if they're deployed, and how secure they really are. So clearly there are various forms of racks, some of which are prettier than others, some of which are quite novel designs, but at the end of the day, they're a heavy piece of steel that the user, the consumer, applies their own lock to, which means, again, having to carry locks and chains, which obviously takes up space in your panniers. Then there are controlled access systems, and the one picture in the middle there sort of looks like a very posh porter cabin, and there it's a card access system. In that case, you're issued with a smart card which you swipe to be able to get into the storage hub, lock your bike in there, and then obviously come back later with your card again. So that's pretty good for the regular user who has been issued with a card, and obviously that sort of thing we're more likely to find outside railway stations and so on. Something like that, by the way, is likely to go in to the forecourt outside Newbury railway station sometime in the next year. And then the third picture there is something that we will talk about more later in the presentation, which is a supervised or cloakroom style location. So here you have what looks like a nice retail unit. People bring their bikes in, they check them in and get a token or a membership number. The bike is taken from them, stored out back, and then you retrieve it later with the token you were issued. And those sort of locations or ideas offer different opportunities, because you can then offer advice on cycling, you can repair punctures, maybe even coffee on sale there. And the one we'll talk about later even gives you advice on where are nice places to actually cycle. So 3 quite different solutions: the basic ad hoc one at the beginning, the regular commuter with something like a card access system, and then the supervised or cloakroom style approach. So where might we want to locate these? Now, our vision is not that there's just one in Reading, because people need to cycle into lots of different places. An obvious one, of course, for commuters is Reading Station. And we're talking to Network Rail, who actually seem quite enthusiastic about improving the facilities for secure storage of bicycles. So that's good news. Employment centres, so whether that's a shopping centre where obviously people work there, or indeed a business park or industrial park, those should be locations where there is secure parking as well. So who might provide the services? Well, obviously people like GWR and Network Rail as transport hub operators would provide solutions. Employers should be providing solutions at place of work, because obviously not only does it make the bike secure, but it will encourage people to cycle and therefore be fitter and hopefully more productive and happier at work. Car park operators, again, you can get quite a few bikes in the space of one car, so it could be viable for a car park operator to move some of their space over to bicycle parking. And obviously councils run a lot of services and so on around the town. Indeed, some of the bike racks around the station are run by the council, for instance. So they are obviously a major player. and I'm happy to say that in our discussions with Reading Council, they've been pretty enthusiastic about working with us to try and improve things. Although, as you might guess, they have a few other priorities taking up their time at the moment, but their enthusiasm is certainly there. So what sort of security solutions do you think would help you guys cycle more? Where would you want them? Are you a commuter? Do you want it therefore at something like a Reading station, Tilehurst station, or even somewhere near the Majeski, sort of around the bus hubs in the town centre? And is that because you go there shopping? Do you want to go there with your family, or do you go there for business meetings and so on? One thing that we're often asked is, well, how much will it cost? And here there's a variety of answers. So some cases it's provided free, and that particularly often relates to transport hubs. There are places, for instance, in London where you pay for leaving your bike for a day. So clearly paying for it will help the whole business model and will help stimulate the growth of such places. So what would be your attitude towards paying for these things? If I just close that initial poll and I'll open a new one, which is really addressing the questions I've just said. So if you can fill that in, it'd be great. So clearly we need to build some momentum around the whole idea of secure parking and storage. And clearly that is about visibility. There needs to be something there to help people believe that you can actually find a solution to leaving your bike securely, whether it's at a station or in the centre of Reading or whatever. And what we landed on was a kind of hope or an idea that if we can find a retail unit or a couple of retail units in the centre of Reading that need bringing back into life, we could do a number of things. I mean, obviously the main idea would be to use that as a way of a location to securely park your bike while you're shopping or at a business meeting. But given that what we're talking about in this case is a supervised solution, not only does it bring a unit back to life, but it will increase footfall around that location, which is good for retailers and so on in Reading. Also breathes more life into the centre of Reading. Hopefully we would provide work experience for people who are trying to enter the jobs market or need some sort of training, some experience to put on their CV. So hopefully it will help with employment prospects. If we can find a location that has enough space, then ideally there would be other services there. For instance, I mean, some of you will be aware of the Bike Kitchen, who offer repair services and so on. And that's the kind of thing that could be integrated into a location with enough space. Offering advice. Now, advice could be, anything from where's a nice place to cycle, like along the Thames Path or whatever, but also it could be the hub for bikeability training. And Avanti, who offer a lot of bike training in our area, are keen on the idea, because again that would give them the opportunity to offer training to I guess adults and children alike, because we could probably all do with a refresher there anyway. And so this whole idea of encouraging active transport by creating a warm feeling about not just parking your bike, but the support and help that you would get whilst you're doing that. Now, the other point of this was hopefully we could get this going relatively quickly, because if there's already a retail unit there, maybe it won't take us very long to get it up and running as a supervised hub. So low infrastructure requirement. And of course, it will test whether it's a good idea, to what extent it really will encourage people to cycle more. So that would be our aim, is to get one, possibly two of these up and running, let's say soon. What we need to achieve that is three core things. One is we need a location, obviously. We need somewhere, we need a landlord or a property owner effectively to loan us their space for probably a couple of years at least whilst we test this idea out. We clearly need funding because equipment has to be provided. We want to ensure that there are proper working hours so that people can rely on the time that they'll be able to leave their bike. So we can't, whilst volunteers will be great, we have to have a core of paid staff. So funding will be important to that as well. And organisation. So, if we're having staff, someone's got to manage them. So an organisation who can manage those people, manage the payroll and so on is another key aspect. And again, we have a couple of organisations who have said they might be able to help with that. So key thing that we're looking for at the moment is a friendly landlord who's committed to improving quality of life in Reading and improving cycling and is prepared to lend us a location. So that's our main focus at the moment, although obviously funding and organisation are key things as well. So the Stockton Hub. So this is the picture that you saw at the opening of the presentation. And it's quite a posh looking outfit. It's in the centre of Stockton. It's well maintained by the volunteers who staff it. You can see that it looks very clean and welcoming on the outside, and then on the inside the bikes are, in this case, double racked and locked there securely. They've actually feeling very pleased with the success they've had. They've had a lot of bikes parked over the last 5 years. And the most reassuring thing, I guess, is that they haven't lost a bike in that time, which is obviously a pretty important characteristic. So how does that work? Now, the Stockton Hub is a membership system. So you join as a member and you use that membership number to log in your bike and obviously to retrieve it at the end. The storeroom is managed by the staff member. When you wheel your bike in there, you leave it there, and then when you come back, quote your membership number, and the staff member opens the storeroom again and watches you collect your bike. Interestingly, they offer a number of other services. So they will service, in other words, fix punctures, stuff like that. They give maps and information on where to go walking or cycling. They run cycle maintenance classes, bikeability cycle training, and even bike recycling. And obviously all of those services, in a sense, are available in Reading today through the Bike Kitchen or Avanti training. The Bike Kitchen recycles bikes and so on. So again, all of those kind of services, there are providers of those in Reading as well. So hopefully if we get the right location, that kind of thing could be on offer here as well. So what do you think? Is that a good idea? Would it help you, or encourage you rather, to cycle more into Reading? And where do you think it should be? Obviously, we want to at least start with something. But I guess a key question ultimately is there should be more than one, and both in terms of the supervised approach that we've just talked through, but obviously the unsupervised or controlled access locations that might be more suitable for the commuter hubs like Reading Station or whatever. But ultimately, we would want a number of them in the town centre to support people coming into the town centre from different directions, and obviously around the different transport hubs and industrial hubs around the town. And a key question, I mean, you may think that it should be free, fine, but would you pay for it? How much do you think it is worth? Because obviously people pay anything from very small amounts for their bike to very high amounts if they're buying an e-bike, for instance. And so sometimes it's significant investment. But at the end of the day, if your bike is stolen, the inconvenience is massive. So clearly you don't want your bike stolen, even if it's not a financial worry for you, because how are you going to get home? You've got to go through all the process of reporting it and so on. So it does have value, and so in theory people might be prepared to pay for it. So I think I've kind of talked you through the background, one specific proposal being the supervised hub. We have got some enthusiasm coming through from various places, Reading Council, Network Rail, and people like Avanti, Reading Cycle Campaign. So quite a lot of enthusiasm, and which obviously we want to turn into something real and tangible. So I guess what we could do now is open up for discussion, to gauge your views, your comments on what you've heard, suggestions as to if you think there are better ideas, or ideally if you've got a building you'd like to lend to us, that would be even better. So
shall I share the results of the poll?
Yeah, if you can. Yep.
That's that one.
Okay, we've got some pretty regular cyclists joining us today, and some people who rarely or never. So I guess that's not a surprising spread. Obviously that red line, the rarely or never, that's a key area that we want to try and improve on. And then why are people cycling into Reading? And interestingly, most of it is leisure. So that's the ad hoc use, which is where the sort of supervised cloakroom style approach might be most suitable, for instance. Rob, can you scroll down? Or is that's all those questions?
That might be you. I'll scroll down on my view.
Oh, have you? Oh, right. Okay. So, well, can you go through the rest of them, Rob? Would you mind?
Yes, there's where you park your bike in Reading. It says place of work, racks, station, other. So don't work that great place, other. And not surprisingly, people would cycle more if there was security for their bike. So that's the initial poll. And I'll see if I can call up the second poll, which shows you that Reading Station was the most popular site. As Ian said, Network Rail are looking into improving the facilities for cyclists at Reading Station. And I think the second one, most people would cycle more if there's supervised parking, but clearly there's also the whole business of the cycling infrastructure to address. And how much would you pay? It's about £1 a day. As Ian said, the Stockton Hub is free. They looked at the charging, but at £1 a day, they felt it was almost more trouble than it's worth, because they'd have to cash it, they'd have to buy a card machine and so on. But there is, if you want to park your bike in, I think it's in Regent Street in London, it's £6.50 a day, but anyhow. But it may be, we'll see, obviously that's something to be considered, and the type of system that's we actually end up with. So that's the results of the poll.